the younger women are reinventing the wheel because they don't understand always where things came from. You know, what was the reasoning behind the way that we do things now? And I have no doubt that they're going to achieve really great things. They're going to, they're going to stand on the shoulders of the first women firefighters, and they're going to hopefully achieve the greatest heights. That's what we want for them. That's what we want for them. My name is Brenda Berkman, and I brought the lawsuit that got the first women hired as firefighters for the city of New York. I am the founder and first and former president of the United Women Firefighters organization for New York City. And I was a New York City firefighter and fire officer for 25 years. I have a really hard time with the word hero because I think that so often it is used to describe people who, and rightly so, they're heroes who have done things that are, physically daring and self-sacrificing in that way. But I also, and that's why we admire firefighters so much, because it doesn't matter what time of the day or how bad the weather is or what neighborhood you're called to, or that you're tired, or you've got other things on your mind. You go and you do your job no matter what, and you help people however you can. And that's why New Yorkers, call us when they're in their direst hour of need and they don't know who else to call. But for me, a real hero is somebody who exhibits moral courage. And that's somebody who, stands up. It's not always physical, although you look at Dr. King and great heroes of the civil rights movement who did pay with their bodies, to fight injustice. But also they had great moral courage. And people like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton and all the suffragists, Harriet Tubman, people who, stood up and despite ridicule and also never actually seeing the change that they were advocating for. Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton never got the opportunity to vote. And it's just those kinds of people, Gloria Steinem, Robin Morgan, the heroines of the second wave women's feminism movement, those people are great inspirations to me because of their moral courage. There were many things that happened to me over the course of my career, from really nasty stuff that happened in the firehouse to being sexually assaulted to, being people questioning my abilities really throughout the course of my whole career. That constant sort of nagging hostility, that wears people down. And I would say, sticking with it was hard. I would say it was also really hard after September 11th to lose all those friends and coworkers, but also to have women erased from the history of 9/11 as the rescue workers and responders to the Trade Center on 9/11. So there were various points in my career that were really tough. It just so happened that I had worked in a lot of the divisions that had the greatest number of losses. I had worked with about 250 of them. In addition to that, there were all these, men that I had worked with over the course of, at that point, almost 20 years in the fire department. And I'd made friends with a lot of them. And a lot of them I had been in lieutenant school with and, training school with. And it was a great loss to the department. It was just overwhelming. We had to rebuild. We had to go on. We had to do our work, and yet there was always this real challenge to get past the survivor guilt for a lot of us, because any of us could have been killed down there. A lot of it was just one person ran in this direction when the building started to come down, and another person would run this way, and one person would die and another person would survive. So, you know, it was a really devastating experience. My dad had been in the war, in World War II, and he'd been severely injured, and both of them had hard lives growing up. And you know, that generation, which, you know, Tom Brokaw has coined the phrase, the greatest generation. Well, they were a group of people who grew up in the Depression and then had the rationing and the terrible losses of World War II. My mom's brother was killed returning from a bombing mission over Europe in World War II. My dad was severely injured and lost his best friend. And, you know, all these things happened to these people, and yet they went on, and they raised families and they educated their children, and you know, that they were inspirational for me. They always encouraged me and my brother to do things for others, because their philosophy was, you know, we're not put on earth just to take up space. And so, you know, it's important that we make the world a little bit better than we found it. Now, persistence is very important, you know. It is very important, but the most important thing is to first be that person that stands up, that takes a stand against discrimination and injustice. And then after that, it's persistence, you know. I knew that it was going to be a marathon and not a sprint. I knew, looking at what had happened with women police officers, that there would continue to be opposition to women being firefighters. And there still is this attitude out there that women cannot do physically demanding tasks. There's still that attitude, after all the evidence to the contrary, that women cannot be heroes. And we see this discussion in our popular culture all the time. I'm kind of stubborn, and I thought that people who opposed women coming on the job, they were wrong. And they would come to see, most of them, as more women did the job successfully and proved themselves on the job, they would come to see that, in fact, women were capable of doing the job. All we had to do was hang in there. And we did.